In this video, I'm going to take you through the create, the just, the range, and the repeat operators in RxJava. So these are kind of I would call them the most basic operators with RxJava, and especially the create operator. The create operator is, it's the simplest operator, I would say. Maybe not the simplest, but it's the most general, but it's also the most flexible. So like these other operators, just, range, repeat, you might not use that often. But create is it's a pretty foundational operator, I would say. It's definitely worth knowing about. So yeah, in this lecture, I'm just going to be kind of going through the course lecture on my website, which is the create. Hopefully you can see that. I think my video is going to be on the screen here. The create, just, range, and repeat operators. So why should you care about these operators? The just and create operator can be used if you want to create a single observable. So think of it as like, I just want to create a single observable, and create, it can be used to create a single observable, but it can also be used to create amid a list of objects or a list of, no, it wouldn't be a list of, yeah, it could be a list of observables actually also too. So the just operator, kind of the only caveat with the just operator is that it can only, if you pass it a list of objects, that list of objects can only be up to 10 entries long. So it's kind of weird that they would limit it that way, but obviously there was a reason for it. I don't really know what it was. I guess just because they wanted to keep it simple, like if you just have a single object or you just have a small list of objects, that's when you would want to use the operator. I'm not really sure, but yeah. So the range and the repeat operators, those are going to be great for if you have to do any kind of, I'm probably getting too far away from my mic there. If you have to do any kind of work where you're looping through something and then like performing a task or executing a method, you can use the range and repeat operators to basically replace that loop. And you can do that work on a background thread, and it makes it really easy. So like with the range operator, you could iterate through a range of numbers, for example, and then you could execute a method on each iteration of that number and do it on a background thread and then pass the result to the main thread. The same thing is with the repeat operator. You could use it in conjunction with the range operator. So if you wanted to execute a task on a range of numbers, say 1 to 3 or 2 to 5 or whatever, then you could say, and I want to repeat that 5 times. So you could use both those operators in conjunction with one another. So pretty cool stuff. Definitely some usefulness there. All right, so I'm sure you're sick of me talking and you want to see some examples. So let's look at the example. So first is the create operator, and you can see I have kind of a little text box here telling you generally what it's going to do. It's going to take an object of type T as input, and it's going to output an observable of type T. So that T could be a list of objects, T could be just one object, whatever. The point is it takes an object and it creates an observable out of that object. So just reading the description here, the create operator is obviously used to create observables. It's the most basic, but probably the most flexible. I already told you all that. So let's keep going down here to the example. So I'm going to give you two examples. The first one is creating an observable from a single object. The second is creating an observable from a list of objects. So let's take a look at the single object here. So I have Android Studio open, and what I'm going to do is I guess I could copy and paste this, but I guess I might as well just type it out since you probably want to see me type it out anyway. So in this project, I have a whole bunch of classes. Don't worry about all this. This is kind of just like stuff I've been playing around with. So don't worry about all these classes. The thing I do want you to pay attention to is this task class. So what this is a string field, a Boolean field, and an integer field. It's to create a plain old Java object denoting a task object, basically like a task to be done. So the task has a description, a Boolean representing whether it's complete or not, and then a priority for that task. And this is the class I'm going to be using to do this demonstration. So yeah, let's get started here. So first I want to create an observable out of a task object. So first I'm going to create a task object. So final task equals new task, and I want to pass it a description. So I'm just going to say, walk the dog. It's going to have I believe the priority is the next one. Let's take a look here. No, it's complete. So I'm going to say, no, it's not complete. And the priority is just, some integer number, whatever, say 1 to 5. So I'm giving it a priority of 3. It's not that important, but it's got to get done today. So now I want to create that observable. So I could go observable, making sure to get the Rx import. Remember the io.reactivex import. Then I can specify a type, so it's going to be an observable of type task. I'm going to call it task observable equals observable, and then I'm going to reference the static methods inside the observable class. I think my laptop fan is probably pretty loud. I'm going to try and turn that down a little bit. All right, this should be a little better. I turned down my laptop fan. I opened the window so there's some better lighting. We are ready to continue here. So I'm going to use the create operator, and then I want to pass a new observable on subscribe interface. So I'm going to let the autocomplete build that for me, and now I'm going to write, of course, the subscribe on. I want to subscribe on the background thread, and then observe on the Android main thread. So we've done that plenty of times before. You should already know kind of what's going on there. And then I want to do subscribe, so I'm just subscribing. And then inside here, I want to write new observer. So I'm passing an observer. And, oh, whoops, I can't actually pass the observer since I'm creating the observable object. So I'm going to get rid of that subscribe method. We're just creating the observable here. So now what happens inside the subscribe method? So this method is going to be called when something subscribes to this observable. So like when I go task observable dot subscribe, pass a new observer. As soon as I do that, when this onSubscribe method is called, that's when this method is going to be called, and kind of officially that observable is going to get created. So inside the onNext method, I'm going to print out the task object. Just going to print out the description of the task, and that way we know that that everything's working. So what goes in this subscribe method? This is where we actually have to create the observable. So this is kind of going to be a unique process to the create operator. You won't have to do this in any other operator, but you have to actually call the methods kind of manually, the methods in the of the observer. So you'll notice that I have an emitter object available to me here. So what I want to do first of all is I want to go if the emitter dot is not disposed. So if this if the observers have not been disposed of, basically, then I still want to emit objects. So in that case, I want to do emitter dot on next, and I want to pass that task object. And since there's only one object, I want to do emitter dot on complete to then complete the whole process. And that's it. That's going to create a observable object out of a task, and where it's going to create an observable task object and then subscribe to it, and it's going to print out here on the screen. So I'm just going to run this just to quickly show you that everything's working, and then I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it with a list of tasks and just show you that it's slightly different, but it's largely the same. All right, so there is the app on the screen. I'm going to go to the logcat, and my filters are all messed up, so I'm going to add a filter here. So coding with Mitch, and still nothing showing up. So sometimes it does this when you run the app for the first time when you first start the device. So I'm just going to run it again here, and the log should print out what I'm after. So there we go. There's the expected log, and then there's our observable printing saying walk the dog. So that's it. That's how to create an observable out of a single object. So now let's go through what it would be like to create an observable out of a list of objects. So instead of using a single task, what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to go list. I'm going to create a list of task objects. So say tasks equals, I have a data source class, which I'll show you in just a second, and I'm calling the static method create tasks list. So this also needs to be final because we're going to be referencing it inside here. So what is this data source class? It's just a class that I created to create a list of tasks. So it has one method, create tasks list. It's static, obviously, and it just kind of generates these tasks for me. So now inside here, the difference is I need to now loop through those tasks. So I'm going to write a for loop. I'm going to go task in tasks list. I could have also done data source dot create tasks list, whatever you prefer. It's just an example. Now inside of the for loop, I'm going to place that same code that I had before, but I don't want to complete it until I've gone through all the tasks. So once again, now outside the loop, I'm going to go emitter dot is disposed. If it's not disposed, then I want to complete the creation of the observable. So it's mostly the same. It's just instead of using a single object, you now have a list of objects, and you're calling complete outside of creating that list of objects. And now if I run this, I should see the observable observing that list of tasks. So there you have the app running, and there are our observables. So that's a create operator. And obviously there's quite a bit of flexibility you have with this, because in the subscribe method, you can pretty much do whatever you, oh, choked on my tongue there. You can pretty much do whatever you want. You can create any kind of observable out of whatever kind of object. So pretty cool, pretty useful. Next, we're going to be I'll go back to the lecture and just kind of scrolling down here. Now I'm going to go through the just operator. So as input, you can see it takes a list, or sorry, an array of objects of type T. Optionally, I have here kind of in brackets, you can also pass an array option. I'm not sure what that means. In this example, a data set of 10 strings. You can only pass a maximum of 10 objects using, oh, right. I already knew that. You can only, because I said that at the beginning of this video. You can only pass, if you pass a list of objects to the just operator, you can only pass a maximum of 10 objects. So if in the example, I'm using 10 strings here, I can only at most use 10 strings. Basically 1 to 10 is what you can use. Of course, you could always just use 1. Like I said, it's an array, it's an optional array. It could be 1 or it could be more. And I don't even know if I'm going to go through this example because it's just so simple. So all you're doing is doing observable.just and either passing a list, or you would pass a single object. So you could pass any object. Like in our example, I could pass, I'll just go through it. I could do just and get rid of this, and I would just pass, like a single task object, and that would create an observable out of that task object. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple stuff. You probably won't see a ton of use out of this other than doing exactly what I just did here, which would be creating an observable out of a single task or a single object. So now let's come down to the range operator. So this one potentially you could be using a lot, because you could use it to, like I said, replace a loop where you wanted to execute some kind of method or do some kind of a task, and you wanted to do it on a background thread. So let's go through the example here. So I'm going to go back to Android Studio and delete most of the stuff that we have just done. I'm going to change this to an integer because we're going to be emitting an integer type with the range operator, and changing this to, say, range, and then passing a range of numbers. So this is going to emit a range of integers based on the range that you create here. So I'll just show you kind of, actually I'll change this to observable. So the first example I'm going to show you here is kind of useless. Like you probably won't ever use it in this way particularly, but then I'm going to show you a more useful use case in a second. So subscribe new observer, and then you'll see inside here, if I print out those integers, I'm going to get the integers from 0 to 9. So I'm just going to run this and quickly show you this, and then I'll show you a more useful use case to use the range operator. So if I look at the log there, we have 0 to 8 being printed out. So the last is the first number is inclusive because we have that 0, but the last number is exclusive because we only have that, we have an 8 showing on the screen. So now what's a more useful way that you could use this operator? Well, I said at the beginning of this video that you could probably, a good way to use it would be to replace loops, and loops that you would be doing expensive operations on each iteration. So if you were looping through, a list of numbers, 1 to 9, 0 to 10, 50 to 60, whatever numbers you want, and you wanted to use those numbers and execute some method or do some kind of expensive operation, the range operator would be a good one to use. But you can't exactly use it like this. You have to use it in conjunction with some other operators. So you're not going to understand this because we haven't gone through these operators yet, but you could use something like the map operator, for example, and create a new function, and inside of this function, so any code inside here will be executed on a background thread. So if I do current thread.getName, you'll see that this is being executed on a background thread. And it's being executed on a background thread because we're calling subscribe on and passing the schedulers.io thread pool, which is a thread pool of background threads. Then you're observing on the main thread. So the result, the object that's emitted, will be posted to the main thread. So that's kind of the big advantage of doing it like this. But I have to use another operator still. So if I'm using the range operator, that means it will emit a range of numbers that you pass to it. I'm using the map operator, so it's going to map those objects to some other object. I could just create a task object, so new task. I could say this is a task with priority. I could do string dot value of the integer that's passed. So integer. Then I could do is complete, no, and then pass the priority. So integer. So it's just a basic task object. It's giving me a warning here for some reason. Oh, it's because I want to return a task type. So I'm going to change that to task. Change this to a task type. And I'm going to get this on the next line to give me some more room here. All kinds of warnings. What's going on here? So it should be taking an integer. I'm mapping an integer to a task type. I'm returning a task type. Did I mix these up? Is this supposed to be task and this is supposed to be integer? No, it should be the other way around. It should be integer, then task. Oh, this is what. So I'm returning a task object. There we go. So I'm creating a function that takes an integer as input that's coming from the range operator. Then I'm outputting a task object. This is what the map operator can do. But once again, I'm going to go through this in another lecture. It might even be the next one or the one after. But don't worry if you don't know what this is. It's just an example. So now in conjunction with this operator, I need to use something else. I can use something like the take while operator. So I can say take while, do new predicate. I want to take these task objects while the task dot get priority is less than, say, 9. Because I know that this range operator is going to emit integers up to 9, not including 9, up to 9. So I want to basically keep emitting tasks until the priority reaches 9. So it's kind of like you're iteratively creating tasks, getting the priority higher. Of course, this example isn't super practical. I just want to show you how you could possibly do this. So observable.subscribe, new observer. And now if we go into the onNext method, so onNext, I can print this task object, just kind of get the priority if I wanted to. And you're going to see 9 task objects printed to the log because we are going through a range of 9 numbers. So let's run that. And there we have 0 to 8 being printed. We have those task objects being created and being emitted by the operators. So that's an example of how you might use a bunch of operators, pretty much, to iterate through a range of numbers and do some kind of work on a background thread and then post those results to the main thread. Oh, actually, I should probably show you. So I'll bring the log up here. You'll see that right there, the apply method is being executed on a background thread. So there's the Rx cached thread scheduler thread name. That's from the thread pool. And you have a log output above that says identical 7 lines. So the log just didn't show the other 7 that printed, but there was that many going to the log. So that's the example for the range operator. I shouldn't have deleted that actually, because now the last operator I'm going to show you is the repeat. I think it's the repeat operator. So this is pretty easy. I would just do repeat, 3 times. Once again, I'm going to be observing these integers. I can change this to integer, change this to integer, and this to integer. So it's I'm going to decrease this number a little bit, change it to 3. So it'll go from 0 to 2 and repeat that 3 times. So if I run that, we can take a look and we should see that, repetition. So there it is running, and there's 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. So that's it. That's going to be the 3 operators that I'm going to look at. The 3 operators that I'm going to look at in this video. We've looked at the create operator, the just operator, the range operator, the repeat operator. Kind of the takeaway here is the things to remember is the create operator is the most flexible. I guess you can create lists of objects. You can create objects themselves, but it's the most flexible. The just operator is for, just creating a single observable or just creating a small list of observable. Choked on my tongue again. Creating a small list of observables. Range operator going through a range of numbers, and then repeat is repeating whatever you just did, the previous operator. So that's it for this video. In the next one, we are going to look at interval and timer.